I'm going to create a new document, and I'm going to my File Explorer to load some high-resolution digital photographs. As you can see, this photo is 4,500 pixels tall. These photos are courtesy of the amazing Kodak DCS Pro digital camera that can produce images of 14 megapixels in size. I can just drag this onto the blank document to load, which takes just a second. I'm going to push this image up so you can see the amazing detail that's available in the photo. This photo in its uncompressed state requires 40 megabytes of memory. I'm going to zoom out to see the whole photo. I'm going to scale this picture down so we can fit it onto the page. That small rectangle is my starting page. Let's zoom back to fit. One of the things that distinguishes XARA, and always has, is our transparency controls. If I select the transparency tool, I can then use the slider up here to adjust the transparency. I can fade it into the background more or less as required, and as you can see, this is an interactive operation. But we can do more than just flat transparency. We can do graduated transparency. If I click and drag, you can see that I can create a graduated alpha channel blend on the photograph. This is also an interactive live operation. As I drag the ends of the direction arrow, the transparency is adjusted in real time. Unlike software such as Fireworks, this is not just a screen resolution image, but the full high-res 40 megabyte image. I'm just going to leave the transparency across the corner, like that. I'm now going to make a copy of this photo using the duplicate option. So I now have two copies. And as I drag this copy around, you can see the corner blending with the photo underneath. But we're not limited to just linear graduated transparency like this. If I select the transparency tool and select the menu here, we've got a whole range of different transparency shapes. So, for example, I can select elliptical. And now if I just click and drag, you can see that I can adjust the ellipse. And if I drag on the control arrows, I can change the size and orientation of the ellipse. If I drag on the center control point, I can drag around the image to adjust the center point of my elliptical transparency. Okay, so I've now got two copies of my high-resolution photo. That's 80 megabytes of image data. I'm now going to import another image, in this case, the cat. This is also 4,500 pixels, a huge digital image. I'm now going to zoom out again so we can see the whole photo. And I can adjust the position and scale of the cat, as before, just by dragging the corners like this. And I'll reposition this on the page and return to the previous zoom. We're not limited to simple transparency shapes. We can create any complex shape transparency very easily. I'm going to zoom into the cat to demonstrate this. I'm going to select the freehand tool and just draw a freehand line around the eyes of the cat. Even though I'm using the freehand tool, this is a Bezier line I've drawn. I can adjust the smoothness of this curve and adjust the Bezier control points as you'd expect. But I'm going to crop this shape by selecting the cat below and the new shape, and then crop using the Intersect Shapes menu. And so here are the eyes of my cat. I can enlarge it, I can rotate it, and you can see our solid rotate and drag operating as I do this. But what I want to show you is the feather control. If I adjust this slider, I can blend the edges of the shape, which is called feathering, so it blends smoothly into the background. And so you can see, using feathering like this, it's quick and easy to combine photos in a smooth and professional manner in seconds. The feather tool in XARA X is not limited to feathering photos. It can feather any vector shape or group just as easily. To demonstrate the resolution available, I can select the zoom tool and zoom into a close-up. You can see these are very high resolution images, and yet everything works interactively and smoothly. Okay, so let's zoom back out. I now have 3 high-resolution photos that I've been working on, each of which takes 40 megabytes of memory. That's a total of 120 megabytes of photo data. So, if I were to save this as a native file, which I'll do now, how large do you think this would be? I'm going to save this as test 1, but before I show you the size, just keep your eye on the status line down here. As I click the Save button, This area shows the progress of the save operation. Yes, that was it. Less than a second to save the file. If I now go and select Open, you can see the file that I've just saved. But before I do that, you can see an Adobe Illustrator file here. This is exactly the same artwork as I've just created, except of course you can't do the graduated transparency or feathering, but it uses the exact same photos. This was created with Illustrator CS. You can see this file size is 116 megabytes, which is very close to what we predicted would be required. This is the XARA file, which I just saved, 5.26 megabytes. So our file size is 1/20th that of Illustrator. But better still, the Illustrator file takes 54 seconds to save, whereas our file, as you saw, takes less than 1 second to save. So XARA X is more than 50 times faster than Illustrator. You don't need to be working on a project long for that to add up to a huge time saving. I'm now going to load a file that I prepared earlier, Catwoman 2, which from the thumbnail you can see is a similar picture. If I zoom in, you see the detail. You might notice that there's something a little alien about this picture. And you might have guessed it. I've replaced her eyes with the cat's eyes. I can just drag the eyes around so you can see what I've done. I'm going to increase this in size so you can see I use the same technique I demonstrated earlier. I've drawn around the eye and feathered the edge to blend it in. Very simple, effective, and yet it took me just a few minutes. Let's undo that back to where we started. This file was the same 5.2 megabytes in size, and in case you doubt whether all the full high-resolution photos are really here, I'm going to scale it up to reveal that the entire cat image is attached to its eye. I'm going to turn the feathering off with the feather slider here. One thing you'll notice is that the cat is rather dark. It was darkened to make the eye colour a better match for the woman's face. This is done using the new feature of XARA X called the XARA Picture Editor. If I select the picture editor, the entire cat picture is displayed in a new window. The XARA Picture Editor is a simple photographic editor. It is not a painting program or a pixel editor, but it does allow you to perform the most common photographic enhancements, such as brightness, contrast, etc. You can see here that if I drag the brightness control around, I can adjust the brightness interactively. And similarly, I can restore the contrast and the colour. In fact, this control here is a blur and sharpen control combined. It blurs one way, and if I drag the other way, then the image is sharpened. And these operations are being performed on the full resolution 14 megapixel image in real time. Speed and simplicity is what XARA is all about. If I return the changed photo back to XARA X, you will see the cat restored to its former brightness levels. If I zoom in, you can see this is a full resolution picture of the cat. So why is our saving 50 times faster and our file 20 times smaller than the same file in Illustrator? It's because we embed the original compressed JPEG file in our native file. Illustrator, and all the other drawing programs we've tested, expand the JPEG instead of embedding it. They save the decompressed, expanded photo in their native file. Our method provides significant productivity, file size, and speed advantages. OK, let's just zoom back and undo all of those changes. I'm now going to show you another useful feature very quickly. I'm going to create a caption on top of the photo. I just select the text tool and I type Catwoman. That doesn't show up very well, so I will now resize this. Again, this is interactive solid resize in real time, as you'd expect from XARA X. I don't like that particular font, so I'm now going to select an alternative font from my font gallery, which shows me a small preview of the fonts that I've got installed, and others are provided on the CD. I just double-click to select this font. I'm not really that keen on the colour I'm using here, so I'm going to bring up the colour editor, and by dragging on the colour controls here, I can change the colour of the text. Perhaps more usefully, I can use the little eyedropper here, and as I drag over the picture you can see the text colour changing. It's important to understand this happens as I drag, and not, as in other programs, only when I let go of the mouse. So instead of being a trial and error and trial again, our system is direct and right first time. I'm going to pick a colour from her new eyes, so let's close the colour editor. So I've now got my text over the picture, but it's too plain, so I'm going to make the text a little more interesting using the bevel control. Just select the bevel tool, and once again I can drag on the picture to adjust the bevel. I can have an outer bevel or an inner one. I'm going to create a small inner bevel. I don't particularly like that bevel style, so I'm going to change the style of the bevel to be the rounded bevel, which is much more subtle. I'm also going to give this a drop shadow using the shadow tool. This works like all our others. You select the tool and then just drag on the picture to adjust the shadow. You can see here that I have a rather blurred shadow, but the controls on the info bar at the top allow me to adjust, in this case, the darkness of the shadow. I can make it completely black, or I can make it completely transparent. I'm going to select somewhere in the middle. This slider control allows me to adjust the shadow blur. I can make it a very sharp edge at this end, or can make it very blurred this way. But note again, it's as I drag the sliders the drawing is updating. In this case, I'm going to make it slightly blurred, like this. OK, let's zoom back out. I now have my image with the caption at the bottom. I'm going to enlarge the caption a bit. This is why XARA X is such a great composition tool. The speed and ease with which I can combine vector and bitmap operations, even with very large bitmaps, means a huge leap forward in productivity. And you may have noticed throughout this demo, I've required no dialogues and hardly any menus. It's all been done using our simple set of tools and direct click and drags on the image. Compare our clean, simple, uncluttered user interface with that of other programs. This is a crucial point about the simplicity of our interface and our goal of making software less intimidating to new users. But because our interface looks simple, does not mean the software is less powerful. As you've just seen in the tasks I've demonstrated, it's faster and more powerful than the competitors. Power, speed, with simplicity, that is the art of software.